Once a man went to a gardener and asked, "Which plant gives the sweetest fruit?" The gardener smiled and said, "The one I water every day." Happiness works the same way. People ask, "What is the secret of a happy life?" They expect a big answer. A big achievement, a big change, a big miracle. But happiness is not created by big events. It is created by small habits, repeated daily. Today, let us explore how small habits silently shape a happy life, not overnight, but over a lifetime. People often believe happiness is something waiting for them in the future. They think it is standing at the finish line, holding a reward, saying, "Come here first, then I'll belong to you." So they run. They rush, they exhaust themselves, and somewhere along the way they forget to smile. Many people say, "Once I get that job, I'll be happy." Others say, "When I earn more money, I'll relax." Some believe happiness will arrive after marriage, after children grow up, after problems reduce, after life becomes easier. But life does not work like that. Life does not remove challenges and then allow happiness to enter. Life moves forward with challenges, and happiness must learn to walk alongside them. If happiness were truly a destination, then successful people would never feel empty. Wealthy people would never feel anxious. Achievers would never feel lost, but we see the opposite every day. People reach goals and still feel dissatisfied. They achieve dreams and still feel restless. This is because happiness is not something you arrive at. It is something you carry. Think of happiness like a direction. When you choose the right direction, even slow progress feels meaningful. When the direction is wrong, even fast movement feels exhausting. Many people are moving quickly in life, but they are moving without joy. They are busy, but not peaceful. They are achieving, but not content. Speed without direction only creates fatigue. The truth is simple, but uncomfortable. If your daily habits are stressful, your future will not suddenly become peaceful. If your present moments are filled with complaint, comparison, and constant pressure, your achievements will only magnify those emotions. A restless mind does not become calm just because circumstances improve. Happiness is shaped in ordinary moments. It is created in how you respond to small inconveniences, how you treat people when no one is watching, how you speak to yourself when things go wrong. These moments may seem insignificant, but together they decide the quality of your life. Many people postpone happiness because they believe they must first earn it. But happiness is not a reward. It is a responsibility. It is the responsibility to choose patience over panic, gratitude over greed, and presence over pressure. These choices are not made once in a lifetime. They are made every day. When you live with the mindset that happiness is somewhere ahead, you unknowingly reject the present. You tell yourself that today is not good enough, that this moment is not worthy of joy. Slowly, this habit trains the mind to stay dissatisfied even when life is generous. A happy life is not about reaching a perfect stage where everything is under control. Such a stage does not exist. A happy life is about learning how to walk with balance even when the road is uneven. It is about finding steadiness in movement, not stillness at the end. When happiness becomes your direction, you stop waiting for life to change before you feel at peace. Instead, you begin changing how you walk through life. And that small internal shift quietly transforms everything else. The way you begin your day is the way you train your mind to see life. Morning is not just a time on the clock. It is the emotional foundation of the entire day. Whatever you feed your mind in the first few moments silently decides your patience, your focus, and even your reactions later on. Many people wake up and immediately reach for their phone. Before their feet touch the floor, their mind is already flooded with messages, news, notifications, and comparisons. Without realizing it, they invite urgency before peace, noise before clarity, and stress before strength. The day does not start when the alarm rings. It starts when awareness enters the mind. When the morning begins in chaos, the mind learns to rush. Even small delays feel irritating. Small problems feel heavy. But when the morning begins calmly, the mind learns stability. Even busy days feel manageable because the inner foundation is steady. A powerful morning does not require long rituals or complicated routines. It requires intention. Even a few quiet moments can reset the mind. Sitting silently for a minute, taking a few deep breaths, or simply acknowledging that a new day has arrived with possibilities can shift the entire emotional tone. The first thoughts of the day are especially influential because the mind is still soft, still open. Whatever you plant at that time grows easily. If you plant worry, the day grows anxious. If you plant gratitude, the day grows lighter. If you plant purpose, the day feels meaningful, even when it is demanding. A calm morning teaches the mind that it does not have to hurry to feel important. It reminds you that your worth is not measured by how quickly you respond to others, but by how deeply you stay connected to yourself. When the day begins with self-awareness, external pressures lose some of their power. Even the simplest habits matter. Making your bed, stretching your body, drinking water mindfully, or stepping into natural light sends a message to the brain that life is in order. These small actions build a sense of control and calm that stays with you throughout the day. When mornings are rushed, emotions become reactive. When mornings are grounded, emotions become responsive. This difference decides whether challenges drain you or strengthen you. The outer situations may remain the same, but your inner experience changes completely. A peaceful morning is not about perfection. Some days will still feel heavy, some thoughts will still feel restless. But when the habit of starting gently is built, the mind recovers faster. You do not spiral as easily. You return to balance more quickly. Over time, the way you begin your mornings becomes the way you live your life. If you begin with presence, life feels fuller. If you begin with awareness, decisions become clearer. A few conscious moments at the start of the day quietly create emotional strength that lasts long after the morning has passed. Gratitude is one of the most underestimated forces in life. People often believe gratitude comes after happiness, but in reality, happiness comes after gratitude. The mind does not feel joyful because life is perfect. It feels joyful because it learns to notice what is already good. Most suffering is not caused by what is missing, but by what is ignored. We become so focused on what we want next that we stop valuing what is already present. The roof over our head, the food on the table, the people who care, the breath that continues without effort, these slowly become invisible. When appreciation disappears, dissatisfaction quietly takes its place. Gratitude trains the mind to shift its attention. It moves focus away from constant lack and places it gently on abundance. This does not mean pretending that problems do not exist. It means understanding that problems are not the only reality. Even on difficult days, something is still working, something is still supporting us, something is still holding us together. The mind naturally remembers pain more easily than comfort. It replays insults more than compliments and failures more than progress. Gratitude interrupts this pattern. When you intentionally acknowledge even small positives, the mind slowly rewires itself. It becomes less reactive, less restless, and more grounded. Gratitude is not about grand gestures. It is about small, sincere recognition, being thankful for a conversation, a moment of rest, a lesson learned, or even the strength to endure a hard day creates emotional resilience. These small acknowledgements act like anchors during emotional storms. When gratitude becomes a habit, expectations reduce, and when expectations reduce, frustration reduces automatically. Many disappointments come not from reality, but from the gap between expectation and reality. Gratitude closes that gap by reminding us of what is already enough. Gratitude also changes relationships. When you appreciate people instead of taking them for granted, warmth replaces distance. When appreciation is expressed, even silently, interactions become softer and more respectful. A grateful heart communicates care without needing many words. This habit also protects the mind from constant comparison. When you are deeply aware of your own blessings, the success of others feels inspiring rather than threatening. You stop measuring your life against someone else's highlight moments and start valuing your own journey. Gratitude does not remove challenges, but it changes how you carry them. It adds lightness to responsibility and meaning to effort. Over time, the mind stops asking, "Why don't I have more?" and starts asking, "How can I take better care of what I already have?" That quiet shift becomes the foundation of a peaceful and happy life. The way you speak to yourself shapes the way you experience life. Long before others judge us, we judge ourselves. Long before the world criticizes us, the inner voice begins its commentary. For many people, this inner voice is not encouraging. It is demanding, impatient, and harsh. People often say things to themselves that they would never say to someone they love. One small mistake becomes a label. One failure becomes an identity. Slowly, this internal language turns into emotional pressure, and that pressure steals peace even during good moments. Words carry energy, even when they are spoken silently. Every time the mind repeats negative self-talk, it reinforces fear and self-doubt. Over time, the mind begins to believe those words, and confidence weakens without any external reason. The problem is not always the situation. Many times it is the story we tell ourselves about the situation. Kind self-talk does not mean ignoring responsibility or avoiding growth. It means correcting yourself with patience instead of punishment. Growth happens faster when the mind feels safe, not when it feels threatened. A calm inner environment allows learning. A harsh one creates resistance. When something goes wrong, notice the immediate reaction. If the inner voice says, "I always mess things up," it creates emotional heaviness. If it says, "This didn't go well, but I can learn from it," it creates strength. The situation remains the same, but the emotional impact changes completely. The mind listens carefully to repetition. If criticism becomes a habit, self-doubt becomes a lifestyle. But if encouragement becomes a habit, resilience quietly grows. Even simple words of reassurance can soften inner tension and restore balance. Kindness toward oneself also improves how we treat others. When the inner voice is gentle, patience naturally flows outward. When the inner voice is aggressive, frustration leaks into relationships. Inner dialogue always reflects outward behavior. Learning to speak kindly to yourself is not selfish. It is necessary. You are the one person you spend your entire life with. If that relationship is unhealthy, no external success can compensate for it. Over time, gentle self-talk builds emotional stability. It allows you to face challenges without collapsing under pressure. It reminds you that mistakes are part of growth, not proof of failure. This habit quietly strengthens confidence and creates a sense of inner peace that remains steady even when life feels uncertain. the space you live in, and the people you spend time with quietly influence your thoughts, emotions, and decisions. Often, this influence is so subtle that it goes unnoticed, yet it shapes daily moods and long-term attitudes. A person may try to stay positive, but if the surrounding environment is chaotic or negative, that effort becomes exhausting. Physical surroundings carry psychological weight. A cluttered space creates constant visual noise, reminding the mind of unfinished tasks and unmade decisions. Even when you're resting, the mind remains alert, unable to fully relax. Order, on the other hand, signals safety and control. A clean and organized space does not just look better, it feels lighter and calmer. Environment is not only about objects, it is also about energy. The places you frequent, the sounds you hear, and the atmosphere you sit in all leave impressions on the mind. Spaces filled with natural light, fresh air, and simplicity tend to calm the nervous system, while noisy and overcrowded environments increase restlessness without warning. Human surroundings matter just as much. Conversations shape emotions. Spending time with people who constantly complain, judge, or criticize slowly trains the mind to do the same. Even if you do not agree with their perspective, repeated exposure normalizes negativity. Over time, optimism weakens and dissatisfaction begins to feel natural. Positive company does not mean people who are perfect or endlessly cheerful. It means people who are emotionally responsible, who respect boundaries, and who encourage growth. Such company allows you to be yourself without fear of judgment. In their presence, the mind relaxes instead of defending itself. Choosing your environment is an act of self-respect. It does not mean isolating yourself from the world. It means being mindful of what you allow to influence your inner space. Reducing exposure to unnecessary negativity protects mental energy and emotional balance. Even small changes matter. Removing unused items, adding plants, creating a quiet corner, or limiting time in draining spaces slowly improves emotional health. These changes send a message to the mind that peace is a priority. Over time, the environment you choose becomes the emotional climate you live in. When surroundings support clarity and calm, the mind becomes more stable. Without force or struggle, happiness begins to feel natural rather than something that needs to be chased. Holding on to past pain often feels like protection, but in reality, it becomes a burden. The mind convinces itself that remembering hurt will prevent it from happening again. What it does not realize is that replaying old wounds keeps the pain alive long after the moment has passed. Many people carry emotional weight that no longer belongs to the present. A harsh word spoken years ago, a betrayal that has already ended, or an injustice that cannot be changed continues to occupy mental space. While life moves forward, the mind stays behind, reliving what should have been released. Letting go is not about saying that what happened was acceptable. It is about understanding that your peace is more valuable than your anger. When resentment is held tightly, it does not punish the person who caused the pain. It punishes the one who carries it. The body becomes tense, the mind becomes restless, and joy slowly fades. Forgiveness is often misunderstood. It is not approval, and it is not weakness. Forgiveness is a decision to stop allowing the past to control the present. It is choosing emotional freedom over emotional attachment to pain. This choice is made for inner peace, not for someone else's comfort. The mind resists letting go because familiarity feels safer than uncertainty. Even pain becomes familiar over time, but growth requires courage. The courage to release what no longer serves you, even if it once mattered deeply. Acceptance is another form of letting go. Acceptance does not mean liking the situation. It means acknowledging reality without constant resistance. When resistance ends, energy is saved. That energy can then be used to heal, to grow, and to move forward with clarity. Letting go also applies to expectations. Many disappointments arise because reality does not match imagined outcomes. When expectations are held rigidly, frustration grows easily. When expectations are flexible, peace becomes possible even in imperfect situations. This habit develops slowly. The mind will try to revisit old stories again and again. Each time, gently returning attention to the present weakens the hold of the past. Over time, emotional wounds lose their power, not because they are forgotten, but because they are no longer feeding on attention. When you let go, you do not lose anything essential. You only lose what was weighing you down. The heart feels lighter, the mind feels clearer, and life feels more open. This quiet release creates space for happiness to enter naturally, without force or struggle. What you put into your body does more than satisfy hunger. It influences mood, clarity, and emotional balance. The body and mind are not separate systems working independently. They constantly communicate with each other, and food is one of the strongest messengers between them. When eating becomes rushed, distracted, or careless, the body receives nourishment, but the mind remains unsettled. Many people eat while scrolling, worrying, or working without ever tasting the food. The body may be full, yet the mind feels unsatisfied. This disconnect slowly creates restlessness and irritability. Mindful eating begins with awareness. Noticing the aroma, texture, and taste of food brings the mind into the present moment. This simple act calms the nervous system and signals safety to the body. When the body feels safe, digestion improves, and when digestion improves, emotional stability follows naturally. The type of food also matters. Heavy, processed, or excessively sugary foods may provide temporary pleasure, but they often leave the mind dull or agitated afterward. Light, fresh, and balanced meals support clarity and sustained energy. Over time, the mind begins to feel more stable simply because the body is better supported. Eating with gratitude creates a powerful emotional shift. Acknowledging the effort behind the food, the resources involved, and the nourishment it provides builds respect for the body. This respect reduces guilt and emotional overeating, replacing them with balance and self-care. The pace of eating is just as important as the content. Eating too fast keeps the body in a stressed state, making it harder to recognize fullness. Slowing down allows the body to communicate properly, preventing both overconsumption and discomfort. This creates a sense of ease rather than heaviness. Mindful eating also teaches discipline without force. When awareness is present, the urge to overindulge weakens naturally. Decisions become conscious instead of compulsive. Food stops being an escape and becomes nourishment again. Over time, this habit improves not only physical health, but emotional awareness. You begin to notice how certain foods affect your energy and mood. This understanding leads to better choices without rigid rules or pressure. When eating becomes mindful, life itself becomes more mindful. Presence at the dining table slowly spreads into other areas of life. The mind learns to slow down, appreciate, and stay connected. This simple habit quietly supports happiness by aligning the body and mind in harmony. Silence is often misunderstood as emptiness, but in reality it is fullness without noise. In a world that constantly demands attention, silence becomes rare, and because it is rare, it becomes powerful. The mind is continuously processing information, reacting to sounds, conversations, and screens. Without breaks, This constant stimulation creates fatigue that shows up as irritability, confusion, and emotional exhaustion. When there is no silence, the mind forgets how to rest. Even during moments of physical stillness, thoughts continue racing. Silence interrupts this pattern gently. It gives the mind permission to slow down without effort. In silence, the nervous system begins to settle, and the body shifts from survival mode into balance. Many people avoid silence because it brings them face with their thoughts. But silence does not create thoughts, it reveals them. What surfaces in silence is already present beneath the noise. Facing it with patience allows understanding and healing. Avoiding silence only keeps unresolved emotions hidden, not resolved. Even a few minutes of intentional silence can reset mental energy. Sitting quietly, focusing on breath, or simply observing surroundings without engagement reduces internal chatter. This is not about forcing the mind to be blank. It is about allowing it to be natural. Silence sharpens awareness. When noise reduces, clarity increases. Decisions become easier because the mind is not overloaded. Intuition becomes clearer because it is no longer drowned out by constant input. Many insights arrive not during activity, but during stillness. Silence also strengthens emotional regulation. When the mind regularly experiences quiet, reactions slow down, pauses become natural. Instead of responding impulsively, there is space to choose responses consciously. This space protects relationships and inner peace. The habit of silence creates emotional resilience. When external chaos arises, the mind remembers stillness. It knows how to return to calm. Without silence, stress accumulates unnoticed until it overwhelms. Over time, silence becomes a refuge rather than something uncomfortable. It becomes a place of restoration, clarity, and strength. In that quiet space, the mind reconnects with itself, and happiness begins to feel steady rather than dependent on constant stimulation. Discipline is often mistaken for restriction, as if it confines life to rules and removes joy. In truth, discipline is the silent architect of freedom. Without it, life becomes chaotic, reactive, and exhausting. Habits that lack structure slowly erode energy, focus, and peace, leaving a sense of constant struggle. When the mind and body are trained through consistent practice, even difficult tasks become easier. Discipline does not rely on motivation because motivation is temporary and unpredictable. It relies on habit, repetition, and small consistent actions that build momentum over time. This momentum frees the mind from constant decision fatigue and internal conflict. Many people confuse spontaneity with lack of discipline. True freedom is not the absence of structure. It is the ability to choose wisely without being enslaved by impulses. When discipline is present, choices are made consciously, not compulsively. The mind no longer reacts automatically to every urge or distraction. Instead, it responds with clarity and intention. Discipline also nurtures patience. Goals that seem distant and challenges that feel heavy can be approached steadily without panic or frustration. Each small step reinforces trust in the process, building confidence that life can be navigated with balance rather than rushed recklessness. A disciplined life creates inner stability. When habits are consistent, the mind learns predictability, and emotional turbulence reduces naturally. Stress often comes not from the tasks themselves, but from the lack of organization and preparation. Discipline quietly removes that stress by creating a sense of order within. Discipline is not about perfection, it is about consistency. Missing a step does not break the system, it becomes an opportunity to restart with awareness. Over time, repeated practice strengthens control, patience, and resilience, and these qualities shape the mind into a stable, peaceful state. The freedom that discipline provides is subtle but profound. It allows the mind to engage fully with life, without the constant burden of chaos and uncertainty. It transforms everyday routines into sources of stability and power, creating a foundation for long-term happiness that cannot be shaken easily by external circumstances. Happiness grows quietly when it is shared, yet most people underestimate the power of giving without expectation. Service is often thought of as something extraordinary, something that requires effort, resources, or recognition. In truth, even the smallest act of kindness has the potential to transform both the giver and the receiver. Helping someone without expecting anything in return shifts the mind away from self-centered thinking. When the focus moves from what can I get to how can I contribute, the heart begins to open. This habit creates a subtle, lasting sense of satisfaction that no achievement or possession can provide. The joy of giving does not depend on grandeur. It depends on sincerity. Acts of service can be as simple as listening with full attention, offering a smile, carrying a burden for someone, or sharing knowledge. Even small gestures create ripples that extend far beyond the immediate moment. These gestures remind the mind that life is not only about accumulation, but also about connection. When service becomes a habit, it changes perception. Problems begin to feel smaller, complaints lose weight, and frustration decreases. This is because the act of serving shifts focus outward, away from internal preoccupations, and toward the needs of others. Happiness often grows in the spaces between people, in shared moments of care. Serving without expectation also teaches humility. When actions are not performed for recognition, the ego begins to soften. The mind learns that worth is not proven through reward, but through intention and presence. This understanding creates inner peace that cannot be disturbed by external validation. Over time, habitual service strengthens empathy. Seeing the struggles and joys of others through acts of giving nurtures understanding, compassion, and patience. These qualities, once cultivated, naturally enhance relationships and emotional resilience, providing a steady source of happiness. Ultimately, service without expectation is a habit that nourishes the soul. It reminds the mind that life is interconnected, that joy multiplies when shared, and that happiness is not merely a personal pursuit, but a shared experience that grows quietly through consistent care and generosity. Comparison is a silent thief of joy, quietly stealing contentment even when life seems full. People often measure their worth by looking at the achievements, possessions, or appearances of others, and in doing so, they forget to notice the unique value of their own journey. The mind constantly evaluates, am I enough, based on someone else's standard, and this habit creates subtle dissatisfaction that grows over time. Life is not a race with a universal finish line. Each person walks a path shaped by different experiences, challenges, and opportunities. When you compare yourself to others, you are comparing maps, not the actual journey. What looks like success from the outside often hides struggles and sacrifices that are invisible. The habit of comparison makes the mind blind to its own blessings while exaggerating the worth of what belongs to someone else. Comparison also distracts from growth. When the mind focuses on someone else, it ignores the steps needed in its own journey. Energy that could be used to improve, learn, or create is instead wasted on envy or self-doubt. This subtle drain affects motivation, confidence, and overall happiness. even if the comparisons seem harmless at first. A mind free from comparison notices progress rather than perfection. It celebrates small victories, learns from mistakes, and measures achievement against personal standards, not external ones. This shift allows the mind to find contentment in effort and consistency rather than chasing a constantly moving target set by others. Comparison also undermines gratitude. When the mind constantly measures itself against others, it forgets what it already has. Gratitude disappears under the weight of not enough, and dissatisfaction becomes habitual. But when comparison is replaced with awareness of one's own journey, gratitude naturally returns, creating emotional stability and inner peace. Choosing to focus on your own path does not mean ignoring inspiration from others. It means using examples to learn, not to judge, and allowing admiration to motivate rather than diminish. Over time, this habit protects the mind from envy, fosters contentment, and allows joy to emerge naturally from progress rather than competition. Happiness grows when attention shifts inward. When the mind stops comparing, it begins to appreciate its own uniqueness. The realization that your life is yours alone, with its own timing, lessons and blessings, becomes a quiet source of strength. It reminds the mind that no one can live your life better than you, and no external measure can define your value. Between every external event and the way we respond, there is a space, a silent pause that most people overlook. That pause is where power resides, where freedom from automatic reactions can be found. Too often, life is lived in reaction, with emotions flaring instantly at inconvenience, criticism, or unexpected change. These immediate responses shape the quality of life far more than the events themselves. The mind has a tendency to react impulsively because it wants quick resolution. Anger, frustration, and fear demand attention immediately, and without awareness, the mind obeys reflexively. In these moments, words are spoken, decisions are made, and energy is spent without conscious choice. Later, regret often follows, and the mind learns to fear its own impulsive tendencies. Learning to pause, even for a few seconds, changes the entire dynamic. In that brief gap between stimulus and response, observation enters. The mind notices the emotion rising, feels it fully, and then considers the most appropriate way to respond. This pause is not hesitation, it is the foundation of wisdom. It allows emotional intelligence to guide action rather than raw instinct. The habit of pausing creates clarity. A stressful message, an irritating comment, or a sudden setback can feel overwhelming in the heat of the moment. But when there is a pause, perspective naturally emerges. The mind can evaluate the situation more objectively, separating facts from assumptions and urgency from importance. Decisions made in this space are often more effective, calm, and deliberate. Pausing also protects relationships. Many conflicts escalate because reactions are immediate and unfiltered. When the mind allows even a small pause, words are chosen carefully, tone is moderated, and empathy becomes possible. Over time, this habit reduces unnecessary tension and creates deeper understanding between people. Even the body benefits from this pause. When the mind stops reacting instantly, the nervous system has a chance to reset. Breathing slows, muscles relax, and stress hormones decrease. This physiological balance supports emotional resilience and mental clarity. The power of pausing grows with practice. It can begin as a simple breath, a brief mental count, or a conscious observation of the emotion itself. Each time the pause is taken, the mind strengthens its ability to respond thoughtfully rather than react unconsciously. Over time, life feels less chaotic. Events continue to occur, challenges remain, but the internal response becomes steady. The space between stimulus and action becomes a sanctuary of control and freedom, and in that quiet gap, happiness quietly flourishes because it is no longer dictated by external circumstances, but guided by conscious choice. The body and mind are deeply connected, and movement is one of the most direct ways to influence both. Physical activity is often seen as a task for appearance or health, but its effects reach far beyond the body. The way we move affects energy, clarity, mood, and even emotional balance. When the body is stagnant, emotions stagnate as well. Restlessness, tension, and irritability quietly accumulate, often without being noticed. Movement releases energy that is otherwise trapped in the nervous system. Walking, stretching, or even gentle exercise sends signals to the brain that the body is active and alive. This activity stimulates circulation, increases oxygen flow, and promotes the release of natural chemicals that lift mood and reduce stress. Over time, the mind becomes lighter, calmer, and more resilient. The body also stores emotions. Stress, anger, sadness, and frustration do not remain only in the mind. They lodge in muscles, joints, and tissues. Regular movement acts as a release, allowing the body to shed tension that would otherwise create discomfort or unease. A simple stretch or a brisk walk can dissolve accumulated stress in ways that nothing else can. Movement teaches discipline and presence. When exercise becomes a habit, the mind learns consistency, patience, and the ability to push through temporary discomfort for long-term benefit. Even small routines, repeated over time, produce cumulative effects that enhance both physical and mental endurance. The rhythm of movement aligns with the rhythm of life. Walking outdoors, for example, connects the body to nature, allowing sensory awareness to expand. The mind begins to notice sights, sounds, and sensations that are usually ignored. This presence nurtures mindfulness and deepens appreciation for life beyond the constraints of routine thought. Exercise also improves emotional regulation. Physical activity provides an outlet for frustration and agitation, reducing impulsive reactions. When the body is engaged, the mind is calmer, and decisions are made from clarity rather than restlessness. Over time, this habit strengthens resilience against external stressors. Movement can be simple, yet its impact is profound. It does not require intensity or long hours. A few minutes of walking, stretching, or mindful physical activity each day gradually restores balance to both body and mind. The habit teaches that energy, clarity, and emotional stability are not separate from physical care. They emerge naturally when the body is treated with attention and respect. By moving the body intentionally, life becomes lighter. The mind feels awake, emotions are less tangled, and the capacity to face challenges grows. Happiness in this way is not something that appears suddenly. It emerges quietly as a byproduct of caring for the body, releasing stored tension, and allowing energy to flow freely. A mind that stops learning slowly begins to shrink. Growth is not just about acquiring knowledge. It is about curiosity, awareness, and the willingness to evolve. When learning ceases, the mind becomes stagnant, and stagnation breeds frustration, boredom, and a sense of emptiness. Even small, consistent efforts to learn something new can keep the mind flexible, engaged, and open to life. Learning is not limited to formal education or degrees. It happens in conversation, observation, reflection, and experience. Each new idea, skill, or perspective adds layers to understanding, making life richer and more interesting. A curious mind finds opportunity in challenges, lessons in failures, and inspiration in the ordinary. Without this habit, the world quickly becomes repetitive and dissatisfaction quietly grows. Curiosity is the engine of learning. When the mind notices a question, a possibility, or a pattern, it engages actively rather than passively. This engagement creates mental stimulation, encourages problem solving, and fosters resilience. Even the act of asking why or what if cultivates awareness, sharpening perception and deepening insight. Learning also keeps the mind humble. It reminds us that no matter how much we know, there is always more to explore. This humility reduces arrogance, judgment, and the habit of assuming life is fully understood. When the mind is aware that growth is ongoing, it becomes less rigid, more adaptable, and more patient with its own limitations and those of others. The habit of learning creates confidence in a subtle way. Knowledge is not only power, it is reassurance. When the mind has explored, experimented, and reflected, it becomes more capable of handling uncertainty and making informed decisions. This sense of capability nurtures inner security and reduces the anxiety that often arises from feeling unprepared or uninformed. Even small, consistent learning compounds over time. A few minutes of reading, listening, observing, or practicing a skill each day gradually transforms thinking, perspective, and behavior. The mind becomes sharper, more resilient, and more engaged, ready to meet challenges with creativity rather than fear. Learning also deepens joy. Discovery brings excitement, reflection brings understanding, and mastery brings satisfaction. When the mind continues to grow, life itself feels dynamic and meaningful. Stagnation fades, and curiosity becomes a constant companion, quietly supporting a sense of fulfillment that cannot be taken by circumstances or setbacks. Ultimately, a habit of continuous learning shapes not just the mind, but the way life is experienced. It teaches flexibility, resilience, and appreciation for complexity. It transforms ordinary moments into opportunities for insight and joy, creating a mental landscape in which happiness can flourish naturally alongside growth. Life becomes heavy when it is overloaded with things, commitments, and expectations. People often believe that more possessions, more achievements, or more activities will bring happiness, but in reality, excess creates tension and restlessness. The mind, like the body, can carry only so much before it becomes burdened. Simplifying life does not mean giving up ambition. It means choosing what truly matters and letting go of what distracts, drains, or overwhelms. Clutter is not just physical, it can be mental and emotional as well. Thoughts, worries, unresolved conflicts, and unimportant tasks crowd the mind in the same way that unnecessary items crowd a room. When the mind is overcrowded, clarity diminishes, decision-making slows, and contentment becomes harder to find. Each addition to life that is not essential becomes a weight, reducing the capacity to appreciate the present moment. Simplification begins with awareness, noticing what is truly valuable versus what is habitual, expected, or imposed allows the mind to prioritize energy. Saying no to activities that do not align with purpose, letting go of possessions that serve no real function, and releasing relationships or obligations that drain rather than uplift slowly lightens the load. Each small removal creates space for ease, focus, and peace. Expectations are another form of clutter. Life rarely unfolds exactly as imagined, yet people often insist that it should. When reality does not match expectations, frustration arises. Reducing attachment to rigid outcomes allows the mind to move with circumstances rather than against them. Flexibility becomes a source of freedom, and disappointment loses its power. Simplifying routines also strengthens presence. When there is less to manage, the mind is free to experience moments fully rather than rushing between obligations. Even ordinary tasks become meaningful when attention is focused and undistracted. The act of slowing down itself creates a sense of spaciousness that supports calmness and joy. Over time, simplicity creates clarity and focus. Decisions are made more easily, energy is directed more effectively, and priorities become obvious. Life is no longer a series of scattered actions. It becomes intentional movement toward what truly matters. Happiness does not appear as a result of grand achievements, but as a natural byproduct of living with less noise, less burden, and more awareness. Ultimately, simplifying life is a practice of alignment. It aligns actions with values, possessions with need, and attention with presence. This alignment cultivates calmness, reduces stress, and opens the mind and heart to experiences that bring lasting satisfaction. In simplicity, the mind finds space to breathe, the heart finds room to feel, and happiness emerges quietly, without effort, as a natural companion of a life lived with clarity and purpose. Sleep is not simply a pause in activity. It is a vital process that restores the body, mind, and emotions. Many people treat sleep as optional, sacrificing rest for work, entertainment, or worry, without realizing that every hour of lost sleep accumulates quietly in the body and mind. Fatigue reduces clarity, patience, and resilience, making challenges feel heavier and small irritations feel magnified. During sleep, the body repairs tissues, strengthens the immune system, and balances hormones. The brain processes experiences, consolidates memories, and clears out mental clutter. Without adequate sleep, the mind becomes reactive, emotions become unstable, and the ability to think creatively diminishes. Even the simplest decisions feel more difficult when the mind is exhausted. Sleep is also an emotional reset. During deep rest, the nervous system calms and stress chemicals decrease. When the mind experiences this regular pause, emotional resilience strengthens. Small disappointments do not feel overwhelming, and frustrations are easier to navigate. The body and mind learn to recover from the inevitable strains of daily life. Many people underestimate the cumulative effect of small sleep deficits. Staying up late occasionally may seem harmless, but repeated deprivation slowly erodes energy and focus. Productivity suffers, relationships are strained, and mood becomes fragile. Protecting sleep becomes an act of self-respect, a way of honoring the limits and needs of the body and mind. Establishing a healthy sleep routine is not complicated. Going to bed and waking up at consistent times, creating a calm environment, reducing exposure to screens, and allowing time for quiet reflection before sleep all signal to the body that it is safe to rest. These small practices gradually improve the quality of rest, creating a foundation for energy and emotional balance throughout the day. Sleep also nurtures clarity and perspective. Problems that seem overwhelming while awake often appear manageable after rest. Solutions emerge more easily, patience increases, and the mind approaches challenges with composure rather than reaction. Sleep, therefore, is not a luxury. It is a necessary tool for living thoughtfully and intentionally. Over time, the habit of prioritizing sleep transforms life quietly. Physical vitality improves, mental sharpness increases, and emotional stability strengthens. Decisions are clearer, responses are calmer, and the capacity to enjoy daily experiences grows. Sleep is not merely an absence of activity. It is an essential rhythm that allows life to unfold with balance, energy, and the subtle steadiness that supports lasting happiness. Perfection is an illusion that many chase without realizing the cost. People often believe that happiness, success, and acceptance are tied to flawless performance or a flawless life. This belief sets impossible standards that the mind can never fully satisfy, creating frustration, disappointment, and self-criticism at every step. Life, by its very nature, is messy, unpredictable, and imperfect, yet people spend enormous energy resisting this reality. Accepting imperfection does not mean giving up or becoming careless. It means seeing life clearly, without insisting that every piece fit a rigid mold. Mistakes, failures, and flaws are part of growth, part of learning, and part of the human experience. When the mind stops labeling imperfection as failure, it begins to see opportunities for improvement without being weighed down by guilt or shame. Holding on to perfection creates fear. Fear of making the wrong decision, fear of judgment, fear of failure. These fears slow progress and drain energy. People postpone actions, delay expressions of creativity, and avoid risks, all in pursuit of a standard that is impossible to meet. Acceptance of imperfection frees the mind from this constant tension, allowing action to flow naturally and courage to emerge. Imperfection also invites authenticity. When the mind stops hiding flaws and resisting reality, life becomes more honest, relationships become deeper, and interactions become more genuine. There is relief in realizing that showing the full selfing, including mistakes and vulnerabilities, does not diminish worth. On the contrary, it creates connection, trust, and a quiet sense of integrity. The habit of accepting imperfection changes perspective. Problems are no longer catastrophes, they become challenges to navigate. Setbacks are not judgments, they are lessons to integrate. Life becomes a series of experiments rather than a test with a single correct answer. This shift allows resilience to grow because the mind is no longer crushed by minor failures or unexpected difficulties. Perfectionism also robs joy. When the mind waits for everything to be exactly right before it allows itself to enjoy, happiness is always postponed. Acceptance of imperfection creates space for gratitude, laughter, and presence. It reminds the mind that beauty, growth, and meaning exist even amid flaws. Over time, embracing imperfection strengthens the mind. It cultivates patience, reduces stress, and nurtures confidence that life can be lived fully without rigid control. It allows the heart to breathe and the mind to move freely, creating a quiet steadiness in which happiness can thrive naturally, not as a reward for achieving perfection, but as a companion to a life lived honestly and fully. Laughter is one of the simplest, yet most profound, ways to lighten life. It does not require preparation, money, or planning, but it carries an energy that can transform the heaviest moments into something bearable. People often take life too seriously, believing that constant effort, vigilance, or control will lead to happiness. In reality, seriousness without lightness slowly drains the heart and stiffens the mind. When laughter is absent, emotions become rigid, small frustrations feel unbearable, mistakes feel catastrophic, and ordinary challenges feel overwhelming. Humor acts as a gentle release, reminding the mind that life, with all its difficulties, can also be playful. It introduces perspective, showing that even in struggle, moments of joy can exist if we allow them. Laughter is also deeply connected to the body. When we laugh, muscles relax, stress hormones decrease, and blood flow improves. The nervous system receives signals of relief, signaling that the environment is safe, even if external circumstances are chaotic. This physical shift creates mental clarity and emotional calm that cannot be achieved by thinking alone. Learning to laugh more requires awareness. It is not about ignoring challenges or avoiding responsibility. It is about noticing absurdities, finding lightness in everyday moments, and refusing to take minor setbacks as personal disasters. A small joke, a shared smile, or even silent amusement at one's own mistakes brings immediate relief and gradually reshapes emotional patterns over time. Humor also softens relationships. When interactions include laughter, tension decreases and connection deepens. Arguments lose intensity, misunderstandings become easier to navigate, and bonds strengthen naturally. The ability to laugh with others rather than judge or criticize fosters empathy and emotional resilience. At the same time, laughter balances judgment. A mind that constantly critiques, analyzes, or compares misses subtle joy. Humor allows perspective to widen, showing that mistakes, imperfections, and failures are part of life and not evidence of inadequacy. This shift reduces anxiety, frustration, and self-criticism, creating space for contentment. Over time, the habit of finding laughter in life changes how challenges are experienced. Situations remain difficult, responsibilities remain demanding, but the mind approaches them with lightness rather than heaviness. Laughter does not remove difficulty, it changes the relationship to it. In that subtle transformation, happiness grows quietly, emerging from the ability to engage life fully without losing sight of joy, playfulness, and the simple delight that exists even amid imperfection. Change is rarely the result of sudden effort. It is the outcome of consistent, small actions. Many people feel overwhelmed by the idea of transforming their lives and believe that only grand gestures or dramatic shifts can create meaningful results. In reality, real transformation begins with one small habit repeated patiently over time. This repetition quietly rewires the mind, reshapes routines, and ultimately redefines the quality of life. The mind resists sudden change because it is comfortable with familiarity, even when that familiarity is uncomfortable. Big leaps feel risky and stressful, often triggering procrastination or self-doubt. Small habits, on the other hand, feel manageable. They respect the mind's need for stability while gradually nudging it toward improvement. Over time, these incremental actions accumulate into profound transformation. Consistency is more powerful than intensity. 1 minute of mindfulness daily, one kind word, one small act of self-discipline. These may seem insignificant, but the effects compound. Each repetition strengthens neural pathways, trains emotional responses, and deepens understanding. What begins as a conscious effort eventually becomes effortless behavior, silently reshaping character, perspective, and emotional resilience. Focusing on one habit at a time prevents overwhelm. When the mind tries to change everything at once, energy disperses, motivation falters, and the sense of accomplishment diminishes. Selecting one habit, nurturing it until it takes root, and then layering another builds momentum that feels natural rather than forced. Growth becomes a journey rather than a sprint, allowing patience, awareness, and self-compassion to accompany progress. Small habits also teach mastery over attention. The mind learns that meaningful effort does not require chaos or heroism. It thrives on focus, discipline, and intentionality. This mastery extends beyond the specific habit, influencing other areas of life. The quiet confidence gained from repeated small successes becomes a foundation for resilience, perseverance, and emotional stability. The habit of incremental change transforms perception. Challenges that once seemed insurmountable are approached step by step, reducing fear and increasing confidence. Failures are reframed as feedback rather than evidence of inadequacy. The mind gradually learns that progress is measured not by sudden leaps, but by steady, persistent movement forward. Over time, the effect of small habits is profound. They silently shape personality, perspective, and behavior, creating a life that reflects conscious effort rather than reactive chance. Happiness is not found in one monumental change. It grows through the accumulation of mindful actions, the quiet reinforcement of positive patterns, and the steady cultivation of habits that align with purpose, awareness, and presence. Happiness is often imagined as something distant, something that arrives when circumstances are perfect, when achievements are complete, or when problems have disappeared. Many people spend their lives chasing it as if it were a reward waiting at the finish line, only to discover that even reaching their goals does not guarantee the joy they expected. The truth is that happiness is not a destination. It is a practice, cultivated quietly in everyday moments, and through the habits we nurture consistently. Happiness is shaped by attention. Where the mind places focus, energy follows. If attention constantly drifts toward what is lacking, what is unfair, or what has gone wrong, dissatisfaction quietly grows. But when attention is directed toward gratitude, presence, and mindful action, happiness begins to take root. This is why small habits, repeated consistently, are far more powerful than grand gestures or sudden efforts. Daily practice is the foundation of lasting happiness. It is not enough to feel joy occasionally. Happiness requires training the mind to notice, appreciate, and respond constructively to life as it is. Acts of kindness, self-compassion, conscious awareness, and presence in small moments slowly reshape emotional patterns. Over time, the mind becomes naturally attuned to notice what nourishes rather than what drains. Happiness also emerges from alignment. When thoughts, words, and actions are consistent with values and purpose, inattention diminishes. Inconsistent behavior, unresolved conflicts, and neglect of personal well-being create subtle unrest that clouds joy. Practicing habits that honor integrity, self-care, and connection with others steadily builds emotional balance and contentment. The mind must also be trained to respond, not react. Many moments of unhappiness arise not from external events, but from automatic emotional reactions. Habits such as pausing, reflecting, or choosing perspective create freedom from reactive patterns, allowing a steadier, more peaceful experience of life. The mind learns that even challenges, setbacks, and uncertainties can be met with calmness, curiosity, and resilience. Happiness is strengthened by conscious simplicity, letting go of unnecessary burdens, simplifying expectations, and releasing comparison create space for appreciation and presence. When the mind is free from clutter, physical, mental, and emotional, it can experience life fully rather than through the lens of distraction, craving, or dissatisfaction. Over time, the accumulation of small, intentional habits quietly transforms life. Moments of joy become more frequent, stress becomes manageable, and the mind cultivates a steady sense of ease. Happiness is not dependent on luck, circumstance, or achievement. It is a cultivated state, built through repeated acts of awareness, gratitude, kindness, presence, and self-care. Ultimately, happiness is less about what life gives and more about how life is approached. It is practiced in the ordinary, nurtured through attention and intention, and strengthened by habits that honor the mind, heart, and body. A life shaped by these habits does not chase happiness. It allows it to unfold naturally, quietly, and steadily, creating a calmness and fulfillment that remains even when external circumstances shift. Happiness is not a sudden gift, nor is it hidden in some faraway destination. It is quietly built, moment by moment, habit by habit. The small choices we make each day, how we speak to ourselves, how we move, how we connect, how we pause, and how we notice, accumulate into the life we experience. The truth is simple. Life will never be perfect, circumstances will never be fully in our control, and challenges will always arise. But the way we respond, the habits we nurture, and the attention we give to the ordinary moments determine whether life feels heavy or light, restless or peaceful, empty or full. So start small. Begin with one habit, one mindful moment, one act of kindness. Let these grow steadily. Over time, the quiet discipline of daily choices will shape a mind that is calm, a heart that is open, and a life that is joyful. Happiness is not something to chase, it is something to practice. And the beautiful part is, every moment is an opportunity to begin again, to choose again, and to water the seeds of a life that feels lighter, brighter, and deeply fulfilling. If we commit to this practice, even in small ways, happiness is no longer a distant hope. It becomes a companion, walking with us quietly, steadily, and faithfully every single day.